Welcome to Sigbaggers YouTube channel. I'm Steve, and today I've got a package deal for you for the Tri Glide. A buddy of mine from up north brought this Tri Glide down for me to do some work to, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to get this thing on camera for you. Now, we all know that the Harley suspension on pretty much all of the touring models is, well, they're just not known for having the best suspension that comes out OEM. So we're going to be addressing in this video the rear of the bike, and in the next video we'll be addressing the front of the bike. Now, all the products that we're going to be doing are all from DK Customs. We're going to start by addressing the sag on the Tri Glides. Now, I can stand here for 15 minutes and go on and on about the sag that's in the rear of these bikes and how they set with the butt end down and how they've set like that forever. We're going to be doing the 13-inch comfort lift on here. It's going to take care of all that sag in the back of the Tri Glides. It's this little bad boy right here. This goes on both sides of the rear of the bike. This part here just kind of mounts to the bike, and this is where your shock goes. If you've ever looked at your OEM bracket, it's very similar to this, but this section here is more straight, and what that's going to do is get that bike up in the rear end so we're not sagging. Just the weight of everything on this bike causes sag in the rear end. And then when you put you on there, your passenger on there, and then your additional luggage that this thing can carry, you're going to get a lot more sag. Now, when we ordered all these parts, I was completely unaware that the Trike already had a lift kit on it. But we are going to be switching it out with a DK because my buddy wants everything in the rear of the bike to match. We got the DK Custom shocks going on, and we got the DK Customs lift kit. There's one thing I want to address about this real quick. Please, please, please stay away from the eBay and the Amazon junk lift kits. They're absolutely not built the same as these brackets. Now, the difference I can tell between this and a knockoff one that's 30 or 40 bucks, hardened American steel, and that powder coating that's on here, it's not painted. If you get the painted ones, that paint's going to come off, it's going to rust, it's going to turn into crap. So just stick with the hardened steel, powder coated. And if you notice right here, it has a boss nut right here welded to the back of the bracket. The knockoff ones don't have that. Now, there's a lot to unpack inside this shock, and I'm going to briefly go over it, but I highly suggest that you click the link down below to the DK Customs videos that I'm going to link down there. There's several videos and articles that I hope that you take the time to watch and read, and it'll explain these shocks a heck of a lot better than what I can. When you go to order your DK shocks, you're not just simply going to go on there and pick out your bike and your model and your gear and just order shocks. There's a series of drop-down menus of questions that you're going to have to answer so they can set up the shock that's going to be best for you. Now, with the extensive research that I did in the videos that I watched and the way that they explain how these shocks are made, like I said, this is a patent pending design. This is something that they came up with, they've studied for the last 2.5 years, and they finally released the shock. Now, they have a 13-inch version and a 14-inch version of this. The 13-inch version is what we're going to be putting on the Trike today. This shock, unlike all of the other shocks, gives you a full 4 inches of travel. But the genius, in my opinion, inside this shock is the valving that's in there. You've got 2-stage valving instead of 1. So this has a 2-stage dynamically adjusting rebound on it, right? And what that's going to do is help maintain contact with your tires on the ground at all times. No matter what surface you're going to be riding over, whether it be little bitty bumps or just dips in the road, or those dreaded bridges on the interstate where, like I know in Indiana, those things, every one of those things is like a freaking ramp. So when you hit those things, you're like ramping up onto it and then ramping off of it. I swear the people in Indiana don't know how to build transitions between roads and bridges. And that's one thing to keep in mind when you're out riding on roads. There's a big difference between just hitting a bump in the road or a large pothole or dips and swoops in the road. But this shock also has a 3-stage compression dampening valving. And what those 2 stages do is it allows it to auto adjust to the roads that you're riding on. So for instance, if you're out, say riding out at Sturgis, and you get out into those really curvy roads out into the mountains and stuff, but you want that tighter feel on that when you're hooking all those really super sharp corners out there. So you'd have to stiffen up your suspension a little bit to be able to handle those curves. But there's other places out there in Sturgis that don't have such great roads. There's a lot of cool rides out there that are just kind of off the beaten path, and those roads aren't exactly great. They do have a lot of dips and bumps and swoops, and like you could be riding 1 minute on pavement, next thing you're on gravel, and those roads are pretty long as well. So you would normally have to get off your Trike, readjust that suspension for that different type of environment. With this type of shock, with those 2 valves in there, it's going to auto adjust for whatever situation that you're in. So like I said, the adjustable shocks aren't that bad to adjust, but on like a trike where you have to lay on the ground and crawl up under there and get your hand on it and adjust it and then hope that you got it right. And you also don't want to be that person that is, you know, spent their good money on adjustable shocks and you just don't have the time, or you don't feel like crawling around on the ground, so you just kind of leave it where it is, and the road that you're on isn't exactly great, and you just kind of settle for the quality of ride for wherever it's set up at, right? Now, normally I don't go into a huge explanation about parts that we get in here. I generally just kind of go over the part, let you know why I like it, you know, and then we get it installed, and then I let you know if I liked it or if I didn't like it. But like I said, there's a lot to unpack in those shocks, and I just wanted to get it on camera to let you know like the benefits that I read and I thought was going to be beneficial for the trike. Now, of course, the first thing we want to do is get this big bad boy up off the ground, and if you're doing this by yourself, you're going to have to get kind of creative. So I used a normal motorcycle jack in the center. Then on the rear of the bike, I used a 3-ton pump jack. Now we put this one straight in the middle, and I just kind of went back and forth until we got the bike up off the ground. I put jack stands underneath the rear, and you'll see those here in a minute. But before you get it jacked up in the air, the first thing you want to do is remove your center hubcap. If you have one, this one had one, take that off and go ahead and use a 4-way or impact, whatever you have. Go ahead and bust those lug nuts loose, and don't mind all the creaks and ohs and oohs and ahs while I'm getting up and down, because I'm getting a little older and that floor is getting farther away. When you're putting the jack stands underneath your bike, you've got dual exhaust back there. Make sure that you get the jack stands in there and pushed as far apart as you can. If you have the jack stands real narrow in there, it's going to make that bike wobbly, right? So we want to make sure that we push those jack stands all the way over up against our exhaust and then let the bike down on that. So I got the wheels and tires off the bike, but in case you decide to skip forward in this video, I don't want you to miss this part. Later on in the video, we're going to address this, but when you're putting your wheels and tires back on your bike, you torque your wheels down, and after the first 500 miles, you re-torque your wheels again. Absolutely necessary to re-torque your wheels after 500 miles of riding. So if you've taken your trike to the HD shop, to an independent dealer, or to a buddy, whatever, if they have ever had your wheels and tires off your trike after 500 miles, it's up to you to re-torque those. First thing we want to do is make sure we take a jack like this. We're going to stick it right underneath that pulley belt guard right there. We're going to pump it up until it's about 1/8 of an inch away. We absolutely have to release both sides of the shocks when we're doing the lift kit. You cannot do one side at a time. Now, if you have an OEM bracket on your bike, it's going to use these same 3 holes, and it's just going to come out here and just be a little shorter. You can see this is kicked back a little farther and up compared to your OEM one. That's how you get that lift. Now, on a normal OEM setup as well, you would have a 3/4 inch bolt right here that you'd be able to just put a wrench on and take it out. Now with this style, they've included Allen head bolts, and this one you can't get an Allen wrench in because you're right up against the frame. So the only way to get this one out is to take these 3 bolts loose to pull this away so you can get an Allen head in there and release this shock. On an OEM system, you're going to go ahead and release the shock first by just putting a wrench in here and taking this bolt out to release the shock from the bracket, and then you can change your OEM bracket. I didn't have to remove it completely, but now I can pull this out away and I can get my Allen wrench in here to get this shock bolt off. Now we can go ahead and finish taking this bracket off, which would in your case be the OEM bracket. You absolutely have to have this on jack stands, both wheels and tires off of the trike, and do both sides at the same time. If you're going from an OEM mount to a lift mount, you have to do both sides at the same time. So we're going to pull the first side, move over to the second side, pull it, and install it in that reverse order. Now the full weight, the swing arm, and everything is on our jack. Now I can really get in here and get this bolt out. This would have been a lot easier if it had a 3/4 inch bolt on it, but for some reason we've got these Allen head bolts that are not making this fun. Now the cool thing is you follow this shock all the way up, and in that tight spot right there we've got another button head bolt right there. Now I'm not going to be able to get the camera in here and get my Allen wrench in here and get this out, so I'm just going to show you now. But in order to remove this shock, You've got that other bolt up there. An OEM, once again, would just be a 3/4 inch bolt. So when we get ready to put this back on the bike, there's a few things that I want to show you up here versus laying down there on the ground, showing you down there. This is the DK Customs 13-inch like Trike lift, right? This is the 13-inch shock. So when you're putting this back on the bike, we talked about the boss nut being welded to this. This weld goes towards the tire and not the other way towards the frame. So they make sure that when you mount these, make sure to pick the correct side that goes on there. These additional holes in the bottom down here, these are for your different years model trikes. Got a set here and a set here. So your outer holes, this one and this one, are going to be for your 09 to 13. So make sure that you have the correct side, and then also make sure that you mount them in the right holes. When you're putting this shock on, you want to make sure that the adjuster is at the top, and you want to make sure that this Allen key hole is accessible. So when we're back here, we have way more room to get in here to get to that Allen key if we ever needed to adjust these. But like I said, if you answer all those questions when you order these will be pre-adjusted for you to already just mount them on your bike. Now, if you remember when we took the bolt off, the bottom bolt, the bolt goes in from the inside out, and the top bolt went from the outside in. Inside the kit, you're gonna have these little spacers like this. You've got a large spacer and you've got a smaller spacer. So there's gonna be 8 total, 4 spacers for each shock. Remember, your bolt went from the outside in at the top, so your short spacer is gonna go onto the bolt first, into the pivoting hole, big spacer in the rear. At the bottom, it's going to be just the opposite because the bolt went from the outside in. So it's going to be the short spacer on the inside, large spacer on the outside. So the easiest way to remember that is on these spacers is to make sure that the small spacer goes nearest the bolt head. So if the bolt head is on this side, small spacer on this side. If the bolt head's on this side, small spacer on this side. Very easy to remember, but it's very important that you get that correct. I'm not going to be able to get the camera up in there, so I'm just going to show you right here what I'm doing. Remember, the bolt at the top goes in this way. So the first thing we're going to do is take our small spacer, because the bolt head goes to the small spacer. Bolt in on the back side, large spacer. Remember, on both these spacers, this little cutout piece right here goes in the eyelet like that, doesn't go the other way. DK Customs calls for red Loctite on these blue bolts on the thing. I think red Loctite is just a little bit too aggressive for shocks, so I use blue, but I make sure to use enough that it completely covers the threads. So this is ready to be installed. So I'm going to cut the camera and get that topping installed. Like I said, you can't really see what I'm doing anyway. All right, so now we got these shock mounted to the top, and on the bottom, remember, our bolt goes in this way. So we got the small spacer on the back, the large spacer on the front. And with the button head bolts that came with the previous suspension, we couldn't use those because they were too short. So we've converted back to a stock bolt. This is a 3/4 inch bolt. We're gonna bring our bracket up into place. And remember, the boss nut goes towards the wheel and not towards the frame. So that goes here. We're gonna take one bolt for that, put some blue Loctite on it. We're gonna bring it up into place. We're going to go ahead and get that one started. And remember, on the bottom, this is a 2013, so we're going to use the outer 2 holes. So we get this one and this one. We can bring our shock back into place, and we can see that it's not lined up with the hole. That's where that jack's going to come into play on the bottom of the belt guard down there. We can jack this up or let it down to get this to line up. So it looks like we need to let it down just a tad, and we should be lined up with this hole. All right, so it looks like we got it lined up, so I'm gonna pull my bolt out, get some blue Loctite on that. Go ahead and run these down. And we'll get these torqued to spec. Now the pinch bolts are 41 to 45 foot-pounds, and the shock bolt here is 55 to 60 foot-pounds. Now this is on a 2013, so make sure to check your service manual to get the right specs for your bike. All right, so we got the other shock on, mounted the exact same way, except, you know, flipped around the other way, it's the other side of the trike. But I couldn't get the camera up in there really to get that on that bolt, but we got that one installed just like the other side. We got our 3 pinch bolts. We're gonna add some blue Loctite to those, get those ready. Our top one in, put that top one in. We're gonna get that bottom bolt started right there. I'm gonna line up our holes on the bottom here. Now we're gonna move the jack once again to line up these two holes down here. Now we're gonna try and line up our holes here. Remember what, we gotta use those front two holes for this system. You may need to use your jack again to get this up and down just a little bit to get those to start. So now at this point, all we have left to do is get our wheels put back on. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, very easy to do. This is something that you can definitely do at home. After we got cleaned up, my wife got home from work, we jumped on the trike and we took it for a ride. The best part about on the highway is that when I was going through the long curves that we have out here, they're pretty sharp, some of them, and the bike felt super tight, felt great underneath us. And then I turned off on a country road, which I know is not well maintained. Took off down that road. The suspension blew me away right off the bat. I mean, it was just chewing up all of those little uneven bumps. Now, I've worked on trikes here before. Every single time I work on a trike, I take it down that road. And normally, that backcountry road out there beats me to death. I mean, it hurts my kidneys to ride. I absolutely hate riding trikes down that road. So I was a little hesitant when I first turned on it, but I knew it was going to be a perfect test for the trike. And it was literally chewing up every single one of those little bumps. With all the different uneven pavements out there that you get on old country roads, you still kind of feel that. It's not going to just eliminate everything and make you feel like you're riding on a cloud. What it did, though, on all of those bumps is it took that jarriness out of it. It was just, you know, all I kind of felt was just the normal right and left stuff that you feel riding down country roads. I mean, I literally turned around to my wife and I said, this is amazing. These shocks are just chewing this stuff up. We got up to the railroad tracks, and I normally try to hit those at under 10 mile an hour, and I tried them at 30. I thought worst case scenario it's just going to hurt a little bit, but I mean, it just chewed those tracks up too. And they're high embank over down onto the tracks, off the tracks. I mean, it's a pretty hard system there. It's not smooth at all. Definitely chewed that thing up. We got out on the other highway coming back, which another high embanking curves out there. Back to just tight suspension, hooked the corners, absolutely blown away by the auto adjusting of those shocks. Now the front end of the trike was still super jarring to me, because like we had the smoothness in the rear end that you know, I'm not normally used to on a trike. So then like I just kind of forgot about that after we were riding because it was so smooth. And then I was kind of, my brain just kind of started focusing on that front end and how jarring it was. It wasn't smooth action. So I'm actually glad that that's something that we're going to be addressing in the next video on this trike, and that's more products from DK Customs, and it's going to be going on the front end. But if you want to get your hands on this stuff, as always, there will be links down in the description to DK Customs, to the stuff that we purchased. But make sure that you check out the rest of the website, because they have a ton of stuff on there. It's not just suspension stuff on there. We did an external breather from them on our performance bagger build, which turned out awesome. Easy install on that. But there's a ton of stuff on that website, so make sure to check it out. If you have any questions on this install, leave in the comment section down below. But if you have super technical questions, make sure to give DK Customs a call, or jump on over one of their videos and you know, put a question down there on the bottom of one of their videos. They can definitely help you way more on the technical side of this suspension than I can. But hey, I'm gonna get out of here and get myself back to work. I hope to see you in the next video, but until then, as always, be safe, keep your knees in the breeze. Thanks for checking out the video. Don't forget to hit that like and that subscribe popping up over here. And don't forget to check out the rest of the channel, because we have a ton of bagger related and soft tail videos on our channel. And to get you started, maybe you can check out